Welcome, everyone, to another Exceptional Admins Conversation podcast. Thanks for hitting play here on the show and on YouTube. I am very excited about my guest today, and we have to see the sign on the back of his wall. Please vibe responsibly. It's going to be a great conversation about emotional intelligence, connectivity. And so, DB, I'm so pumped that you've given me this time today. It's exciting. The way that we met was actually in September of 2022. We were both at a boot camp, and I just loved what you were talking about. I've been following on LinkedIn ever since, so over a year now. And I reached out to you, and here we are. And you're going to give us all of your wisdom about positive intelligence and more. And so I can't wait to hear all of it. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
You are very welcome. Our connection was a good vibe, and that's why we're here, right? And
Exactly.
that's part of what we mean when we say vibe responsibly, which
Mm-hmm.
essentially, when you're thinking about emotional intelligence, it's this conscious connection to how you show up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then when you show up and it's time to engage, um, are you intentional? Right?
Mm-hmm.
About the outcomes that you want when you're engaging with folks. And so the world would be a better place if if we vibed responsibly, right? If when everyone woke up in the morning and after they did their routine, before they allowed the outside world access to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They committed to understanding that you are responsible for how you act, no matter how you feel.
So
And
true.
so, when we talk about vibe responsible emotional intelligence, the whole movement for me is to help. So I'm what we call a EI performance coach, right? An
Mm.
emotional intelligence performance coach. My goal is to help you emotionally win the day.
Mm, 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 mm.
And, and I want to help you with that because I don't ever want you to let your emotions to overpower your intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can get you surgical with that, right, then you can take it from there, right?
There's
You'll
so
make
much.
better
Yeah.
decisions. So that's what I do, DB Bedford. Been doing this for about 10 years, and it's been a journey, and I'm excited to be here today. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I said positive intelligence. So I'm glad because now I'm seeing it underneath the great, please vibe responsibly, that emotional intelligence with which for my audience, I say often I've transitioned away from leading with emotion, which is really important not to remove that from your identity, but not have it be primary. And so I'm really excited about covering that today. I'm very curious, even though we covered it a little bit when we've chatted in the past. I want to know the story that really led you, as you just said, you've been doing this work for 10 years. Take us through that journey of, what it was for you that led you in now to this beautiful body of work of helping people vibe responsibly and use their emotions more intentionally in their day to day. So, as I love it, you put it right, access to yourself and how you want to take on the day. So give us that journey so we can understand what led you to what you're doing now.
So I'm a very transparent individual, and it come from me not being emotionally intelligent. So I grew
Mm,
up in Oakland, California, and I grew up in under the gun, if you will, under a lot of pressure. In food deserts, right? Food deserts is being growing up in areas where there's more liquor stores but no grocery stores, things of that nature. And I ended up, starting hustling and selling drugs around the age of 13, excuse me. And I ended up on this path from 13 to 23. And in
mm,
that journey, I ended up getting in trouble a lot.
mm,
So I ultimately was a four-time felon at one point in my life. And so what does that look like? That's selling crack cocaine in the late 80s, selling marijuana in the early 90s before it became legal. That is possession firearms, that is high-speed chases, things of that nature. Um, and we won't have, it'll be a whole segment for me to unpack my journey.
Each of
But
us,
I
yeah.
wanted just to give your audience
Thanks for
an
the transparency. Yeah.
yeah, opportunity to understand that I grew up in a time where my parents got divorced when I was like 8 years old. And when parents get divorced, who typically leaves the house? For what you know,
The father.
right?
Yeah.
And so in my situation, though, my mother left the house.
Oh.
Right. And so, my mother and father were that for whatever reason, my mother ended up leaving. And I remember the day like it was yesterday. Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
8 years old. We lived in West Oakland on a street called Magnolia in a big Victorian house at the
Mm.
time. And they were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And so my mother was going in and out, uh, putting her stuff into the car. My auntie came to pick her up, and she wasn't even paying attention to me because she was so bitter at my father,
Yeah.
to the point where as she was like putting her final things in the trunk and walking around the passenger side of the car, she finally looks up over the top of the car while I'm standing on the porch. And she looks out and goes, "Oh, I'm never coming back, so don't look for me."
Mm.
Right. And I say that not to throw my mother under the bus, but when we talk about emotional intelligence, do you think that my mother, when she says, "Oh, I'm never coming back, so don't look for me," you think my
Mm-hmm.
mother was actually talking to me?
Mm.
Right? That message was really for my father, but my mother didn't have the discernment to separate for how she was feeling about my father to be available for her son. And see, this is one of many reasons why I do this work, because I had to reverse engineer my life,
Oh.
see all the areas where emotional intelligence, the lack of it, has such an impact. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, to this day, my mother and our Wi-Fi connect is not strong to this day
Yeah.
because she didn't have the ability to process that traumatic experience in her life, but still be available for the two boys she brought into this world.
Mm-mm-mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
anyone listening would have to ask themselves, have you ever found yourself mad at someone over here, right? And then over there. And then when you get over here, they catch that fade. They pick up on that energy. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
how important emotional intelligence is, because it's
Mm.
about processing things you don't like, that you don't agree with, and that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of the story, so as a result, I ended up moving to another neighborhood in East Oakland called Brookfield, which is where that really living in poverty and pressure really stacked on top of my mother just leaving the house, which made me a very angry individual. So
Mm-mm-mm. It's
I,
easy to be angry.
mhm,
That could take us on a
depressed.
tangent. I don't intend to,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
frustrated, depressed, and when I got to this neighborhood, as soon as I got here, like, people was trying to take my bike, take my starter jacket, chasing me home. "Where you from? What street you stay on?"
Mm-hmm.
The next neighborhood over that was a rivalry with the neighborhood I was in,
Mm.
was putting pressure on me. So I realized right off the cuff, I had to either had to be the lion or the gazelle, right? And
Mm.
so started living a life like, you know what? Before you try to do something to me, I'm gonna do something to you.
Right.
Um, and I got enough energy for it because of I don't have nothing to lose. So I
Yeah.
wanted to put the frame around why this is so valuable to me, but
Mm.
what I did about that. So, and again, there's a lot to unpack. But so there's a couple of markers, right? Being of early age and my mom leaving and not coming back, leaving with my father and everything that he took us through, good, bad, and indifferent,
Mm.
including the neighborhood, trying to survive through that neighborhood and getting
Mm-mm.
getting my status approved, if you will. And then once I became a product of that environment, I was problematic, right? And
Yeah.
so I led with anger, I led with destruction. I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. And then in 1995, I actually lost my temper over something very trivial, and I tried to take a man's life. I literally chased him down the street. and fired several rounds um, into and at him because I disagreed with something.
Yeah.
So I was in jail for about a year, on my way to prison for about 8 years,
Mm.
before a judge gave me an opportunity to be a beacon of light. You know,
Beacon of light. Yeah.
yeah, he seen something in me that I hadn't seen in myself. And
Mm.
a lot of it was because of, even though I was hustling in the streets, back then we did a lot for our community back then. So even though we got this money a dirty way, we took care of our elders. You know, we put on, community picnics. We would buy a whole ice cream truck and give it to the kids. So that was baked into this interesting dysfunctional way of living, right? We still
Mm-hmm.
apart for things and always had an entrepreneur spirit. And so the judge
Mm.
recognized that in my level of influence
Mm.
and encouraged me to he told me that I was using my superpowers for evil. He said, man, if you just use them for
Shift it.
good,
Yeah.
right, things would just change. And so he invested in me, gave me an opportunity, didn't send me to the penitentiary, led me out into this program. It was
Mm.
his program. We start working together, we start getting results. As a result, him and the district attorney blessed me with an
Mm.
expungement, and I was able to get my felonies reduced and dismissed. And then
Wow.
I went back and worked for the probation department where I was once locked up at. So
Yeah.
for 17 years, I was a peace officer at the Alameda County Probation Department, working side by side with officers that was there when I was locked up, and then got promoted to the highest ranking manager. So I became everybody's supervisor before I retired about 7 years ago. In
Wow.
that journey, and thank you for your patience on this story.
I love this story. I've got things to say, but I'm waiting
Okay,
because I love it. Keep going.
I'm about to land.
Okay,
So in
great.
this journey, right, emotional intelligence, right? So childhood trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
Poor decision making, extensive violence, living in survival mode for several years, right? And then on the other side, right, being able to get a reform movement going, work in that space, and then being working in this environment because I used to be there. I had a lot of opposition, right, for people who were jealous, especially
Yeah.
when they have the answer to me, and to make it to the highest ranking. All of this required me to practice emotional intelligence long
Mm-hmm.
before I knew exactly what it was. So when I
Mm-mm-mm.
started looking at how I was able to progress, most of it had to do with the four domains of emotional intelligence. And after I release these, I'm going to pause.
Okay.
All right.
Four
So
domains. Okay.
self-awareness,
Self-awareness,
your ability to manage your reactions,
manage reactions, key,
situational awareness,
situational
awareness,
awareness.
and relationship management. So collectively, if you are consciously connected to these domains, your life will just go to the next level. And I was doing
Mm,
this consciously and unconsciously, sometimes all, sometimes one or the other. But when I look back, it is what has gotten me to the success that I've acquired and to be on your podcast today, to be in a space that you meet me, feel good energy, and go, I'm going to follow up with DB because one day we need to have a conversation. If
yeah.
you had met DB at a different time, you would have wanted to stay far away from me. And that
Right.
is the power of emotional intelligence. Pause.
So, it's a pause. So amazing. I don't think I've ever disclosed this on my show, and I do share just right to the line of personal information sometimes. My father left when I was 5. He left
Mhm,
right when you asked that question earlier. So he left when I was 5. I have had a I had a broken relationship with my mother until I moved out right at 18. I
mhm,
called him and invited him to my high school graduation. He kind of disappeared after 2 years of also being a really deadbeat dad, of not showing up for his quote committed times. He said to me, "I just want you to know, never call me again and envision that I am dead."
mm,
So when you just shared that, I felt your mom saying that, because I
mhm,
was told that you were 8, I was 18. And
mm,
so I I did not have the evolution journey that you did, but I surely wasn't innocent. And if we talk about some of those baked things, I
Right.
did not make good boyfriend choices throughout high school. I married a wonderful man. He listens to the show, honey. I love you. Right. Been married 23 years. But at the same time, I heard you say that, and I led a lot with emotion because of that broken component of, don't I deserve to be loved? And so,
Mhm.
so much of my decision making, which I've done my own, you know, well-being activities to not lead in with emotion, but it doesn't make me heartless.
Mm-mm.
And I love that you're shaking your head. No, because oftentimes individuals believe that if I don't show emotion, Halani, I'm being inauthentic because I'm a feeler. And I'm like, I'm a huge empath. During the year 2020, with everything we encountered, I felt the earth in its pain, which is me still feeling as an individual, but from a decision making standpoint, it is not my driver anymore. And it's a very into the four pillars, and I'll just reiterate them: self-awareness, which for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, getting to that top point of quote personal joy, which is not how they describe it. It's that self-actualization of, who the hell am I? What is
Mhm.
my purpose? How am I adding value? Which is a big thing for my audience. You know, admins are sitting in the space of needing really strong emotional intelligence, which is why I was very excited that you agreed to be on the show. And then the next thing you said was, you know, managing your emotions. This can be a very emotional profession.
Reactions, managing your
Oh,
reactions.
thank you. Okay. I'm going to correct my chicken scratch here. Reactions. Thank you.
Cause that's important because
Good point. Yeah.
you don't have any control over what happens to you, right? You
Mm-mm.
only can manage the way you react to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very, very important for your admins and for anybody else who picks up this vibe. The whole emotional intelligence is not about trying to live a warm and fuzzy lifestyle, right? That's not what we're talking about. And the way I express it, and it's less about feelings to me, and it's more about how you engage with folks, right? And so
Mm.
and so what I mean by less about feelings, like I'm not trying to necessarily have you unpack all of your life in a moment, but I want you to be conscious about something I like to call your internal software, right?
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what that means, but I gotta get the mic back to you
Oh,
because I
you're
hijacked
sweet.
it.
No,
So let
you
me get
did
it
it.
back to
That's
you.
fine.
Yeah, I hijacked it. Take it
No,
back and I'll get back to
because
you.
I want to unpack each of them. And so just that self-awareness, thanks for the
Mhm,
correction. It's manage reactions. I
mhm,
cleaned up my chicken scratch. And then my next one is that situational awareness. I often talk to my admins, whether it's a regular call, even a candidate screen, definitely through coaching, know your audience. What's happening in the moment? We also, as admins, would have a pulse on, is someone having a bad day, bad week? What's the situation there? Again, situational awareness is a big deal for my audience, especially those in the C-suite managing multiple personalities, multiple styles of leadership. And then you said it, and it's the fourth one, that relationship management. I have a smaller circle of relationships from my personal side, not my business side, because one, how much is a relationship draining me?
mhm,
Which I was very good at having unhealthy relationships. And a lot of it stemmed from my upbringing. And I was the most phenomenal people pleaser there was. And
mhm,
I made all relationships about everyone else. And I compromised who I was to make the waters calm. Because
mhm,
my entire upbringing, to a point that you had made kind of in your beautiful story about hearing you, by the way, I'm totally celebrating you because you're so amazing.
mhm.
That point of fight or flight, how am I going to respond? How am I going to engage? And I was always in that for everyone else but me, which then as I get older, I don't believe thinking about myself or loving on myself is selfish. I don't. And every time I hear someone talk about that it seems like a selfish act, you know, they don't know my entire movie of my life. And so I can only
Mhm.
share sound bites of inspiration, which is why I love being able to have the podcast and have really raw conversations like this one. Um, if you love yourself, to your first one, that self-awareness, certain shit rolls off your back. And you're
Mhm.
like, to the point of the next one, like what you can't control, like how are you managing your reactions? I also have a 5-minute rule that for my regular listeners have heard, but if this is your first episode, I give myself 5 minutes to manage that reaction. Am I mad? Am I angry? Where's it coming from? Am I sad? Also, I invite it for the joyful moments of like, that worked out. That extra time I spent, that worked out. I want to celebrate it. I want to be present in the moment of that. Granted, that's not as often as the negative, but you can have 5-minute sessions multiple times a day after adopting this 5 rule practice of the dwelling and negative focus. When you start a clock for 5 minutes and like 60 seconds, which is a long time, passes, like how much longer am I going to have this weigh me down? And then if you've practiced this over the many years that I have, it's now it's like 30 seconds. I'm in the moment and I carry on, because I also don't want, things living rent free in my head. Doesn't mean I don't falter. I do every now and then. It's like, wow, have you not learned your lesson? So I love your 4 domains. That's really amazing. And I can tell too with how you were kind of just leaning into it. So let's talk about managing reactions. And if you want to start with some key components about self-awareness, we'll then move into managing reactions. Thinking about this in the workplace. I know that you do speaking regularly. I mean, your LinkedIn feed is blowing up. You're all over the place. And you're spending time. I'm seeing you at, your flip chart with markers and the
Yeah.
audience of people that you're with. Give us a taste a little bit about how that is being broadcasted with the people that are in that room that want to make that pivot, because they know that the way that they're operating now probably isn't fully serving them in the best way possible.
That's an excellent question. So when it comes to like the workshops that I do, I specialize in like half day workshops, sometimes full day workshops with continuing coaching along the way as an EI performance coach. And so my motto, so here's the thing. One of the key components is that I understand at the highest level that there's no way to have professional development without personal development.
Say that again, please, because that was too good.
Yeah,
You got to say it again.
right. There's no way to have professional development without personal development.
And sometimes starting personal first is more
It's
beneficial
the
than
only, it's not sometimes, it's the only
the
way.
only time. Okay, great.
Right. Right. It's the only way in my opinion and in my experience, because although I'm willing to receive any other perspective.
Yeah.
But I think the truth be told, sometimes I ask audiences, what happened to your interview self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your interview self was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, willing, understanding, excited, right? Thankful, grateful, all of that. And then 6 months later, a year later, right? People are it's a struggle for you to accept, right? The
Yeah.
company direction or
Yeah.
the right. So
Yeah.
what happened? That's a personal thing. That's not a professional thing. And
Uh,
so what happens is that
uh,
because most people have not done the work on themselves,
mm,
see, the law of intentionality is going to suggest that your personal growth is how it's stated, but I like to switch it and say your emotional growth is
mm.
not going to just happen. You are going to have to be intentional about it. And if you're not mindful of emotional intelligence, you cannot manage what you're not willing to measure. Right.
Mm,
And
mm,
so if you don't even know about emotional intelligence, if you don't know what skills to use, it's literally impossible for you to have the exponential growth that you're looking for, which is mean that's is why you start to struggle to show up as the best version of yourself.
mm-hmm.
Now, to go back to that, what happens is that to the internal software, your internal software is 3 elements. It's your beliefs, your
Mm,
values, and your life experiences. I believe that everything, even this conversation we're having, you are engaging with me and processing this conversation through what you believe, what you value, and what you've experienced. And as long as our beliefs line up, you see how lit up you got when you heard my story, right? We share some of the same beliefs. All that did was just bring us closer.
That's right.
Conversely, though, right? If I start saying or doing things that buck up against your belief, and then afterwards, husband asks, well, how did it go with DB? If I bucked up against your beliefs and did not do anything to neutralize that feeling, this entire experience will be null and void.
Mm,
Right.
hmm.
I probably, you say we, saying I probably get shelved, saying I probably get, because our beliefs are strong.
Right.
So what happens is that people don't understand. The reason why I call it your internal software, because it's just like the software on your cell phone and your computer. Your software asks for an update quite often,
My
right?
audience is laughing. I talk about this often about updating yourself, not 11.1
Exactly.
to
So
12.0. There's these micro. Okay. Everybody who's
and we didn't
listening, I
have
had
no
no idea he
conversation
was,
about
we
this.
didn't. We had
Yes,
no
total alignment, right?
total
Total
alignment.
alignment. So I'm
Continue,
the
sir.
same way.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
some of us are operating on outdated beliefs,
Yeah. Yeah.
old
The
values,
original iPhone. Yeah.
and hanging on to past life experiences, but you
Mm,
wanted to function in today's time.
mm,
So
hmm.
the fastest way for me, as like a hack, right? In a quick masterclass, if you will, anytime you find yourself bothered by anything for any reason, it is because you are now experiencing one of the emotional biases, which is projection bias,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yep.
Because think about it. Anytime somebody does something or says something that you don't agree with, your inner roommate in you is going, well, damn, why would you say
Mm,
that?
yeah.
Like, why would you do that? No,
Mm-hmm.
no, don't do it like that. So what are you doing? You're projecting. You're
Mm-hmm.
saying that's not how I would do it.
Mm,
That's why it's bothering you, because your belief is that's not how we do it. I wouldn't have wrote that email like that. I wouldn't have answered that call like that. I wouldn't have went to lunch at that time or whatever it is. And
yeah.
so those of us that practice emotional intelligence and have a high level of self-awareness, the reason why we're able to flow with the river and not fight with the rocks is because we know the minute that there is some inner conflict, instead of being bothered about what you said or did, the first thing we ask ourselves is $1 million question is, why does it bother me in the first place?
Such an important question. Why does it bother me in the first place? And you said something that I have a mug and it says, I'm not a control freak, but you're doing it wrong. And for my audience, control is one of the top 5 things, if not top 3, that they want to have, which I've done some work on the false reality of ever actually having control.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stems from, and I can speak to it from my life experiences, which were those 3 things, right? My own beliefs, my values, and trust me, super. And I talk about being a lowercase type A in my daily life now versus that
Mhm.
very suffocating type A,
Nice.
because it's also very exhausting to constantly want to have control. And my kids are older now, so I can soften that control because I'm raising these young little men and it's going great.
Yeah.
And it's different when you're a parent. But it's interesting. You said flow with the river. I just need a little bit more flow. And I need
Mhm.
that flow. And I was offering new big boulders to have to try to get through because of the level of control that I wanted. Now I'm a business owner, as are you. And there are things that I want to have my control around. Case in point, when I'm talking to my clients, I literally say this to them. They're like, how fast can we meet people? And I said, listen, my type A, it struggles a lot in this business. I want to talk to candidates all day long. I want fast responses on my emails that go out. I'm at the mercy of them. And so when I realized we're at the mercy of so many variables around just living life in general, even from your personal life to it's like, why did I not lose the 10 pounds? Like I've been eating salads, right? Doing the
Right.
work.
Right.
But it's some of it is out of your control, or you need to pivot in order to, maybe that didn't work. Now this works. And so, yeah, I have the coffee mug that says I'm not a control freak, but you're doing it wrong. Clearly trying to be funny and not wanting to be too
Mhm.
much of a control freak. And I love how you said the hack is anytime you find yourself, and I didn't get a chance to write the whole thing, but at anytime you find yourself
Just any emotional turbulence, like anytime
turbulence. Yeah.
if you're feeling less than good, right? If you're
Yeah.
not feeling the vibe, if you are not like this is the best moment or the best day ever, then something is bucking up against that. If you
Mm.
are frustrated, if you are being impatient,
Oh, that's a
um
big one.
yeah,
Impatient.
right.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's an opportunity to
Mm.
update, right,
Yep.
that component of your internal software, right? And
Mm.
so what does that mean? It just means that like it's probably bucking up against one of your beliefs or your values or something you've been told.
Mm.
Now, here's the thing about our beliefs and values. Most of them, if not all, don't belong to us anyway,
Mm.
right? Because a lot of it was downloaded to us at a young age. We
Right.
never remixed it. And I'm not saying, and there's a lot of things that serve us well. So this is really more applicable to the areas of your life. Right? So, like for me, with money, right? Because I started selling drugs at 13, I was introduced to fast money, right?
Yeah.
So fast money means you make it fast, you spend it fast, which
Mm-hmm.
made me adopt a hustler's mentality. So then because I come from nothing, I always in survival mode, I release money fast and I don't care because my mind tells me I can always make it back. So as
Mm.
I get older, have gotten older, and so I'm 50 now, but it took me to like I got 40 to realize I hadn't updated that
Mm.
belief because I'm working, I'm making good money, but I'm spending. Like I'm walking in the store, I'm like not even caring with I'm just not like splurging, but I think I was definitely not a good steward of money because
Mm.
of my first experience with money,
Sure.
right? And so it can be in any areas of our lives. Sometimes we are shrewd and short-sighted with people because that's what we see,
Yeah.
right? And we're transferring that energy and we don't even realize that. And then there's a time where it served you well. Maybe you needed to be like that. But
Yeah.
we said in the beginning when we first got started, you know, practicing emotional intelligence is asking yourself also, how do I want to show up?
Show up.
How do
Show
I
up.
want to show up? Right. And that's a question that most people never thought about asking. And when they ask it, they got to go, because now if you want to show up and be negative Nancy, then do your thing. Right. Because listen, we need negativity. We need bad vibes so we can know what good vibes look like.
Yeah, we weren't promised a good day, a solid
Mm-mm.
life, a good life.
No,
We weren't. And
no.
we need evil and or negativity so that we're faced with an option and
Yeah.
that you hope and you should pick good.
So stay in alignment with your assignment. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? But my assignment is to be a beacon of light.
Yeah.
My side is to be a leader, a coach of all coaches, to get to talk about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
My life experiences, even in a moment where I didn't know they was going to have the value that they have today, now they're gold, right? And I can
Mhm.
talk about them freely and help someone in the moment. So I'm excited. I can't wait to go to sleep so I can wake back up.
And do it
You know what I'm saying?
again.
Right? So
Yes.
if you're not living like that, you're out of alignment. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't want to think about this. When we're talking
I
about
was just going to say that. Yeah.
teams and workforces and things of that nature, sometimes I ask the leader or the CDO, I'm like, are you sure your people even want to be here?
Yeah.
Right? Because a person who worked
Such
and
a
been
great
working here
question.
5 they maybe they fell out of love with this part of their life and don't know how to um reevaluate. And so I think it's fair to ask people, do they still want to? I mean, why not check in? You do your advice. Is this still
Yes.
for you? Do you still feel this? Because
Yeah.
get them to thinking. Because if I feel good about what I'm doing, there can't be no problems. We could talk all
Exactly.
day. Whatever
Yeah.
comes up is just part of the process. It's not
Yeah.
thing that we've made a big problem, right? And so when
Mhm.
people are kind of unhappy or don't have clarity or not, so you got to know your why.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be connected to your purpose because when your why is strong, the how becomes easier.
Mm, mm,
When
mm,
your why
mm.
is strong, your how become easier. And that's the beauty of emotional intelligence because we stay consciously connected, you know, to the vibe, to
Mm.
our engagement, the EI code of conduct, if you will. And so I tell people, you will probably never catch me in a bad mood, all right, unless you create it
Okay.
in the moment. You would have
Right.
to create it in the moment to get a glimpse of it, but I bounce
Course
back so
correct. Yeah.
fast,
So
right? So
fast.
it's not that it doesn't happen.
Sure,
So
sure.
I have something that I created called the 5 emotional laws of human nature, right?
Okay.
And so it's governed by the energy that we harness on a day-to-day basis. So I am going to always, and I'll just give you the first 2 laws. And the first one is the law of emotional energy.
I'm talking about energy all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And the second one is the law of energy transitions, right? And so the law of emotional energy is aligned with that self awareness. It's like, hey, and so for me, a shortcut to energy is your mood plus your attitude, the energy that we're going to get when you show up every day, right? So
Show
the first
up.
thing I'm going to do is check my mood, my attitude,
Yeah.
first of all.
So huge.
And your energy comes from different places. It could be relational,
Yeah.
right? Relational energy, right? The people you connected to could be causing you to be a little off, right? It could be your physical energy, right? Because if you're not healthy, right, you might not show up in the best space,
This is true.
right? It could be your mental energy.
There's a lot of things that come into play.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that you're talking about, especially for my audience that might be carrying multiple burdens because there's so much dependent upon them at work, and my routine listeners probably are going to understand they know clearly what I'm about to say. My new listeners are like, I don't know. Yes, you got to put the work in. Yes, you're rolling your eyes because you're like, this is one more thing for me to do. But if we're hearing what DB is sharing, especially his beautiful story, the backside of investing the time up front, and I use this with clients who are onboarding a new assistant. I'm like, listen, we want to skip over the first 365 days. You want that work cadence. You want the reading of your mind. You want that crystal ball and forecasting the future step of you, the executive or the team. The only way to get there is by transferring knowledge, creating conversations, building rapport and relationships, helping them become stewards of what your objectives are, quote, so that they can drive. So, all of that being said, it's a lot of hard work to then throw in this whole emotional intelligence thing, which is why for the admin profession, it is beautifully easy to become a people pleaser. And then when things are slow, they want to then think there's stagnation, quote, I'm not
Mhm.
happy here anymore. Just jump ship and recreate, rinse and repeat that
Mhm.
newness that comes. And so I have an episode on my show. It's called WTF. It's not what you think. It's actually wishful thinking forever. And it falls
Mhm.
in line with the space of, is it is it you? Are you the
Mhm.
issue? With all due respect in saying that and calling people out, like I have to know when it's me that's the issue. If I'm having an internal dialogue or the feedback loop of negativity begins, it's like there's no place here for you. There's no place here
Mhm.
for you at all. And it is so much work, which if anyone listening, and I kind of want your feedback on this, we fall into the negative because it's easy. The extra work, and I mean, I can literally feel it physically in my body of like emphasizing the work that you have to do to just help with the emotional intelligence is a huge undertaking. But if
Mhm.
anyone's been listening to what you said in your story, and then my candor and transparency on
Yeah.
mine,
Yeah.
you can get to the other side and it is healthier and it is also very beautiful.
And
So
I
that
would
hard
say
work,
you're already there.
right?
It's not getting you start off on the right side,
Mm-hmm.
but something we like to call the ANT mindset, which is an acronym for automatic negative thinking, is what puts you behind the 8 ball and then you stay there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's reverse that so people doesn't feel like it's some daunting task. It's almost like, when you sometimes start off in school, they'll be like everybody starts with an A, right? Is a better approach than saying don't get an F, right? Like
Yeah,
you
true.
already there,
Right.
only you can go down from here, based on your
Yeah.
decisions. So let's change the mindset and be like, no, I'm already in good spirit. I'm already
Mm,
a good person. I am already a value add to wherever I go. Now I'm going to be good at protecting my peace
mm,
all times and at all costs, right? And how some of the ways to do that. Well, I'm gonna make sure I choose peace over proving a point.
mm.
You know,
I
right?
love it.
Stuff
Yep.
like that,
Peace
like
over
little,
proving a point. That long email that you wrote to try to prove a point, delete,
yeah,
delete, delete, and just say
not
thank you, pass it
necessary.
on. Not
Yeah,
necessary. Yeah.
allowing people to be who they are. Like it's not up to me. That goes back to, so emotional intelligence helps you unlock the next level of understanding.
Oh, it's beautiful. I
When
love
you
that.
can unlock the next level of understanding, it's almost, I feel sometimes I feel it's unfair, right, to see so many people emotionally hijacked. In my
Yeah.
coaching, um, I understand that when emotions are high, logic is low. It's like a scale. The higher the
It's true.
emotion, and so I could be listening to people and sharing, and I listen to the thing that I feel like that they are, that bucks up against one of their beliefs, and I give them, right, a very logical response, and I watch them fight for their limited belief. And it's been
Mm-hmm.
said that if you fight for your limited beliefs, you get to keep them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like when you are trying to coach or give guidance or leadership, and someone goes, but, or what about this, or what about that? It's like, I've shared with you what you
Mm-hmm.
came for,
Yeah.
right? And I have to allow you to decide what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
Because when I see you fighting for your limited beliefs, you get to keep them, because the
Mm.
beliefs are so strong that I'm not going to be able to get you off of that until
No.
you have a shift in
Shift.
the
Yeah.
way that you are approaching it. Now, with a longer or a more in depth or direct emotional intelligence coaching conversation, we
Yeah.
can start unpacking things. But in general, if I go to the grocery store, I'm at the gas station, you take my parking spot before me. I mean, I used to be, that should be one of my pet peeves,
Yeah.
getting my parking spot taken, until I asked myself this one question: how is it your parking spot if they got there first?
Oh, I
Right?
love it.
So
Oh, I
am I
love
just
it.
being a poor sport?
That was the ultimate self accountability. Yeah. Check yourself, DB.
You mad because you
Yeah.
got beat. That's the
Yeah.
real thing,
That's
right?
actually the real
Right?
thing. Yeah.
That's what
I
you
totally
mad
believe
about,
that.
right? And
Yeah.
so then I had to just laugh, right? Because it's like,
Exactly.
you just being a poor sport.
That's
Hey,
self awareness
you,
in the first domain. Yeah.
yeah,
I love
you were
it.
going for it and you missed,
You
right? You
missed.
wasn't
Yeah.
fast enough. You
Right.
wasn't strategic enough. And so then life becomes this big playground as we move around,
Mm-hmm.
and we understand that just because you have a nightmare doesn't mean you stop dreaming, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna have some days that are,
I saw a bumper sticker.
mm-hmm,
Is it just a bad day or was it really a bad life? Question mark.
right,
And it's interesting how you talk about when emotions are high, logic
it's low.
is low. It's a very emotional space that I'm in, which is almost kind of serendipitous to the emotional journey I was on leading into my business. I have gotten some really nasty emails from candidates who we respectfully let go. And we try very much here to be in the space of communication, even if the communication is not what they want to hear,
Mm-hmm,
because there's this black hole of applying, no response, no feedback. And I get emails all the time, can you give me feedback? And I have to be so calculated, talking about energy expense,
mm-hmm,
calculated in what I respond with, because I do want to give them the feedback for them to progress, but it's also discoverable evidence. They could also be super nasty with like a Google review. And one woman would not let go, right? the paragraph she wouldn't let go. And I thought, I prayed about it for a minute because I really wanted her to get through the emotion of it, because this is her, it's coming through in the phone screens, right? And it's coming through in the
Mhm.
interviewing. And it is very true that when emotions are high, logic is low. And so I
Mhm.
love that there's this accountability tool, the hack of asking yourself, like, what's really going on? Where's this
Mhm.
coming from? And then I think what you said with the ant, automatic negative thinking. I
Mhm.
mean, it's it's real. And
Mhm.
the whole reprogramming or software update, as we both talked about, it's required, right? I was just talking to my assistant earlier, right? You have the cell phone. It's different than the first version. Like we're now at like iPhone 15.
Right,
The
right.
phone is still a phone, but the
Mhm.
software updates, the additional functions, the added features, like the evolution of the phone, you're evolving. I
Mhm.
say a lot, think of yourself as that evolution. Who are you going to be next? What do you want to shed and not take with you next? Right.
Mhm.
And what is it that you want to develop into, like I'm going to download this app and I'm going to start using it to track my food, right? Or my sleep patterns or my glucose levels. So I think it's beautiful. And I think just kind of here at the end, the beacon of light is so beautiful. And for anyone that's kind of listening, that's like, I want that too. And maybe you recognize that some of this was hard to listen to because you're thinking you're high in that space of emotion. We also don't want you to think that that's bad, but there's always a chance. No,
Mhm.
excuse me. There is the opportunity in front of you
Mhm.
to course correct, would be the term. Software update yourself would be the term. So, what are some closing remarks to kind of round out our amazing conversation here?
I mean, you have the power to create how you're going to experience life. Like,
Oh my gosh,
like
that's so great. Yeah.
you can always determine how you can create the experience. Um, the second law I want to just put out there, I think it'd be very helpful in terms of how do you want to show up. It's like your energy when you wake up in the morning, checking your energy, understanding that simple equation: your mood plus your attitude equals your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Energy could be coming from physical, mental, relational, or spiritual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, keeping in mind what you focus on expands.
Mm.
That's just facts.
Watering it. Yeah.
That's scientific right there, right?
Yeah.
But the next one is the law of energy transitions.
Mm-hmm.
We
You said
make
that. Yeah.
so many micro transitions every day and don't even take into account that that is a powerful opportunity to be intentional about how you show up. So when we're done with this interview, right, we're going to turn off our computers and we're going to move from one room to the next.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe from that room to outside or wherever. But as people are navigating throughout their day, every time you make a transition, that's an opportunity for you to determine how you want to show up. Now, your first thought is, well, how am I supposed to keep an eye on that? One
Yeah.
simple hack that we do is that in our EI community is we pay attention to doorways.
Mm.
Anytime we're coming across a doorway, that's kind of our energy detector. We know we're moving from one space to the next. So those in our
Okay.
community are it's a subconscious thing. It takes
Yeah.
little time. It's like, here's a doorway. If I'm about to go run out and run to the store real quick,
Yeah.
it's important for me to check in and make sure I'm good. Because say if this was
Mm.
not a healthy conversation, and then I go to the store and then I'm at the light and I'm two
Someone takes
seconds
your parking
late,
spot.
someone takes my parking spot, triggers the
Yeah.
ODB,
Oh,
or I'm at
yeah.
the light too long
Right.
and somebody honks. What
Oof.
they're going to catch, really not the energy from the moment, but the energy from my past conversation.
That's right.
So energy transitions and being mindful of
Mm.
all these micro movements along with being consciously connected on how you show up increases your chances of getting the best outcome in any situation, whether it's positive or negative, as long as we get the best. And so
Yeah.
I would encourage everyone to get involved with emotional intelligence, understand it. You don't have to learn it from me, but you should get out and learn it. It
Mm.
is a advanced multiplier in your life. It is so good that it's not going to take anything away from you. It can
Oh, it's just
only
add.
align and add with you. It is worth the investment so you can have a more healthy and vibrant life. You shouldn't be running around here mad. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't. That's not how you should not be doing that. You have the power to create the way you experience life. And that's where I'll land at.
Oh my gosh, this was amazing. Totally amazing. And I knew it was going to be a great conversation. So
Thank you so
thank you
much.
for sharing your wisdom. Everyone, thanks for hitting play and making it to the end. If this episode really hit you in a great way and you just want to share it with someone, share it. If you want to leave a podcast review, I'd love for you to share my guests are important. The content that we put out for you every 2 weeks is of great importance for me and for your listening ears and your future. DB, I really appreciate you. I'll have comments or, excuse me, notes in the show notes. If you guys want to follow DB on LinkedIn, definitely a great place to see the work that he's doing and have that constant reminder. And I love that you commented about the doorway. That's a really great tip. So thank you so much, DB. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.